Hi, everybody. Welcome to this very special edition of Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Dezzutti. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a brand new thing for us. We're doing something here in the studio. It's a really fun show planned for you. We're trying something a little bit different, and we want you to be part of the conversation. At any time during this broadcast it's all online, so whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or our website at pbs12.org, you can email us at cio@pbs12.org, and we will incorporate as many of your opinions and questions as we possibly can in this next hour. First, let me introduce our esteemed panel that we have for you tonight. First of all, of course, Patty Calhoun from Westford joins us. We have David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Eric Sonderman from Colorado Politics and the Denver Gazette, and Penfield Tate from Tate Law and a former state lawmaker here in the studio. And we also have freelance journalist Natasha Gardner join us via Skype. Natasha, we've missed you in the studio, but we'll see you here soon, right?
Indeed, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're getting very excited for that. We also want to be sure that you know we're giving you the opportunity to support our show by going to pbs12.org and clicking the donate button. You can also call or text donate to the number on your screen. That's 1-800-690-5234. We want you to make sure you know every dollar you send us today is going to continue the long-time legacy of providing the informative conversations you love from these folks. Every penny earned right now with this event is going right to supporting Colorado Inside Out. We've got a great group of crew around us that we bring in every week to help us be here. So I want to just kick it around first to our panel. Tonight is all about the fans. And I know all of you have been able to interact with fans through the years. Patty, you're one of the original. You are our original cast member, if you so to speak. So you have interacted with the most fans at probably a variety of different places. What stands out to you when you meet fans of the show?
Well, first of all, how much they want to know about other people. Like they think I'm going to have a really, really good opinion of them. And I do have very interesting opinions of them. The other thing that happened often was people thought I was the secretary for the show. So give this message to Ken Hamblin. I had plenty of messages for Ken Hamblin that were my own that I gave him. Give this message to Peter Boyles. Always. I would get calls for Peter Boyles like I was his secretary. Raj did not have to take notes for, and really you. I am not the secretary. But what I'm always struck by is how much everyone enjoys being able to tune in, because it's just like they're watching some of their nutty neighbors and relatives arguing at a cocktail party without the cocktails.
In fact, we kind of undershot that idea. We should have, we're being something special here. We could have gone cocktails.
A little disappointed, frankly.
That's for next time. That's a goal for next time. David, you're popular world over between your tours doing speeches and whether in front of Congress or the Supreme Court or anything about the Second Amendment or other topics of your expertise. But when you've run into CIO fans, what are some of the things that have been memorable for you?
Well, I think it's not known in Colorado how much Colorado media actually penetrates into Montana. And actually, the social science studies show that the Broncos are the most one of the top, maybe the most popular football team in Montana, and apparently somehow Channel 12, at least in the past, used to appear on Montana stations. So one time I was in Yellowstone hiking in Montana and on the trail, and a fan came and said hello to me.
That is really cool. See how effective your dollars here at PBS 12 that we can actually get our signal somehow. I don't know how we got it there either, but even folks in Montana. Eric, you've been with the show a long time as well. What have you had any? What are some of the reactions that you've had as people recognize you? Hey, you're that guy.
Yeah. A few thoughts. First of all, I love one-upping David because it's very hard to do, but I think I can one-up this one more than Montana. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, we did a fabulous trip to China, and we are on an internal airline flying from Beijing to Xi'an, China, and there is somebody else from Colorado who recognized me a long way away from home and is a regular viewer of Colorado Inside Out. The main memory I have is just our kids are now grown and gone, but when they were younger, particularly teenage years, and we'd be out as a family to grab dinner or whatever the occasion was, and some fan or some regular viewer would come up and say hello or recognize me. And the real value of it was in the total mortification of our kids.
I think always a real value, that kind of interaction like that. Penn, your fame is from a variety of sources, especially being a former state lawmaker for quite a long time, a great candidate for mayor. We talked about that on the program. But as folks have seen you on the program, what are some of the reactions that you've seen from people?
You know, it's been kind of neat. It's neat to see how much people pay attention, how they care about issues. The last time I had that experience, Patty and I were out discussing some issues of very great importance one evening. And as we were sitting there over our libations having this conversation, some people came up to us and said, "Aren't you Patty Calhoun and Penfield Tate?" We're like, "Well, why, yes, we are." It was just kind of neat to have that experience. But folks really pay attention. Now, my mother, bless her heart, would have said, there are a whole bunch of people with nothing to do on Friday night because they have no lives. But I think it's really because people are engaged in the civic life of this community and they pay attention. And we have good conversation about topics that are important to them.
Indeed, we have wonderful fans from all sorts of walks of life, but we also have our fair share. I think, as John Kildare likes to talk about, our fellow show on Friday nights, the infirmed, folks who have lost remote controls, the imprisoned. We have a lot of folks that way. Natasha, we don't want to forget about you. You've been on part of the program for a while. What are some of the interactions you've had when you've interacted with fans of the show?
Well, one of the things that I love about meeting fans out in the real world is how informed they are. I mean, as a journalist, as someone appearing on a program like this, you just hope you're reaching people. You hope that you're engaging them, getting them excited about issues. And there's no doubt that the fans of this show always are. But in particular, there's one 8-year-old who, whenever I appear on the show, likes to share it with anyone he knows, including his remote classroom. And part of that's because I have to relocate him every time I have to tape the show. So every Friday that I'm on, he spends some time telling everyone in his class about that his mom's going to be on TV and she's going to be talking about all these issues and things like that. So at the very least, hopefully we're growing some very young fans.
I gotta believe the kind of street cred he gets by saying, everyone has, a pretty decent show until my mom's on TV. If I was your son, I would play that card as often as I possibly could. That's well said. Well, like we said, this program, we're celebrating Colorado Inside Out tonight, but we're really celebrating all of you, all of our fans that have been part of the program for now 29 seasons. And to kick off our conversation tonight, we're going to talk to two super fans. They have been loyal viewers for years and have prepped some questions for us tonight that we're going to share with the panel. We're going to start off with Tim Jackson, the Executive Director at Colorado Auto Dealers Association. Tim, you are one of our favorites around here, especially with our crew. You were kind enough a few weeks back to send some donuts, boy, you have some favorites around here. You're known as Tim the Donut Guy, so I know you've done a lot of great things with Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, but that move was a stroke of genius. How are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing great, and it's an honor to be on with you. I am your biggest fan. I watch live every week I can, but I on the 8 o'clock broadcast, or I record it and or sometimes both. Just watch it twice to get it all in because it is my favorite show. So it's an honor to be on here with you.
We've always appreciated how you've been such an ardent fan, and also I got to say, one of our most prolific, and you're prolific on social media for a lot of different things. But getting different photos, all the different platforms you're watching. So on an online event like this is great. So Tim, we want to give you a shot. You've been kind enough to invite us in your home for so long. Now you get the microphone, and from your setup there at home, it's a very professional setup. You get the mic. Do you have a question for the panel that we can share?
Well, this is actually live from the car shack. So this is the desk I work at every day and come in about 6 in the morning and leave about 10 o'clock most nights. But, one of the things I really like about Colorado Inside Out is that you do take on the issues, whether they're controversial, and usually they are.
That's very.
It will affect the public. And so I wanted to ask this question. One topic that hasn't been covered much, so I want to make sure you Colorado Inside Out gets it covered, and that is the State Air Quality Commission is about to adopt some form of an e-trip program. That is an employee trip reduction plan. So really what we have are state bureaucrats that are, as the governor said, not elected to that role. that are going to hold employers accountable to get people out of cars and onto bikes, onto buses, onto trains, onto their feet, into carpools or some other way to get to work. And it's really big government run amok, we think. We did a survey through Magellan, public opinion study about this time last year, and found that 88% of Coloradoans own one or more cars. And then and this might surprise you, but this is important, 87% of the people living in Denver have a car. So it's not much different. There's not really an urban-rural divide. We're all really dependent upon our vehicles to get us around. And now with state unemployment in 34th in the nation on the bad scale, and where we used to be the 4th lowest, we're now the 34th lowest. This is going to cause employers to want to downsize their staffs or not move to Colorado and operate. So we wonder what the panel at Colorado Inside Out thinks about E-Trip.
Well, I have to say, I'm kind of shocked you'd go there as an idea for a question. I mean, that's kind of off topic for you. I'm just teasing, Tim. That makes sense, and we love talking about transportation on the show. I think way back in '92 when we started, it was a topic. Let's go around the horn. There is a lot there to break down, Patty, but no one breaks down a big issue like this better than you. Your thoughts on the big bill?
Well, mostly by dodging the issue is how I break it down. A couple things. One, people became a lot more attached to their car when they could go somewhere during the pandemic. I know, for example, Natasha didn't. But if you wanted to see anything, you had to get in your car. It wasn't like you were going to have public transportation for a lot of it. If you wanted to go to the mountains or go somewhere you felt safe and socially distant but get out of your house, people did use cars. They didn't use them as much to go to work. So it is possible that now is not a bad time, depending on employers, to push something like E-Trip if you don't work for Tim. But I'm concerned about building more bureaucracy in the state. The Air Quality Control Commission and that department have a couple little scandals they're still dealing with. Ian might go into that too. And do we really need to have Big Brother watching how we're driving when we finally can drive again, when we finally can go to work? I think employers have a lot of issues they have to deal with after a very, very tough year, and this is just one more to heap on them.
David, you've had a lot of great input when it comes to transportation issues over the years, but this also feels, I mean, to Patty's point, that somewhat of a free market issue where I can see some businesses solving the problem themselves with people that are staying remote. And also, I could see a Denver mayor saying, well, don't stay home, come back to downtown, whether you're driving or not, so you can come to businesses downtown. There are some different issues there. Your thoughts on Tim's point about the big bill?
Well, look back to the time when the Air Quality Control Commission was created by the legislature, and Denver metro area in the early 70s had a very serious air pollution problem. On the automobile side of that has been mostly fixed because the federal Clean Air Act has continually ratcheted up cleaner and cleaner emissions rules for automobiles. So today, unlike, say, in 1973, reducing automobile trips is today not really an important way to significantly reduce, to improve air quality or reduce dangerous pollution. I think the motive behind this is, as John Caldera often says, cars are a symbol of individualism, mobility. You get in your old beat-up Toyota, you know, that he bought his first car for $400, and you can go anywhere. And it's wonderful. And some people don't like that. It's really kind of the same thing as goes on with gun laws that are not genuinely aimed at public safety. Some are, but others are not, and are just a matter of cultural war persecution. As George Bush once said in a different context, they hate our freedom.
Eric, there's a variety of political angles to this one, and as David so eloquently displayed there, where do you go on this one when it comes to the issues that Tim brought up?
Well, without going to the gun analogy, I think David hit it pretty accurately here. We don't need the Air Quality Control Commission to get people to tell us and get people out of their cars. When you have the city of Denver doing their darndest to increase congestion or make getting around the city more and more difficult. With the proliferation of bike lanes, and don't get, I can't compete on a bicycle with Tim Jackson, who is a very substantial bicyclist, but I ride my bike every chance I get. I'm not knocking bicycles, I'm not knocking pedestrians, I'm not knocking any alternative form of transportation. The more the merrier, but cars have their place. Tim's statistics are, accurate statistics, and most people still move around this town in an automobile. And to the extent you have a limited supply of lanes on major thoroughfares, and you increasingly take those lanes and use them for other purposes, obviously it just increases congestion. COVID sent congestion the other way because none of us had places to go, as you pointed out, Dominic. But now, as the world is opening back up in a approaching post-COVID world, the congestion is going to return, and it's going to be on steroids, and that is the problem we ought to be focused on, as much as some bureaucrats at the Air Quality Control Commission trying to be our betters.
Penn, you've worked on issues like this as a lawmaker at the state level, and you had a variety of proposals that would at least tackle some of the angles to this as running for mayor. What do you think when you hear about these points from Tim, and what's missing out there?
No, I think Tim has a good point, and to follow through on what Eric said, COVID kept us all home because we had no place to go. Now we're beginning to get out, and if you've been on the roads recently, they're a congested mess, and they're a congested mess because for decades this state, and we just haven't wrapped our heads around the fact that if you want to improve air quality and relieve congestion, you really need to have some sort of mass transit system, not a couple lines here and there, not a few buses here and there, but a comprehensive, cohesive system that can move large numbers of people around during the daytime hours when they're commuting to and from work, and in the evening and weekend when they want to go downtown. I like Eric's point about the city doing its darndest to increase congestion, not just with the bike lanes and the restricted bus lanes. They're destroying all the parking downtown. So I don't know why you want to go downtown. There's no place to park. I mean, somebody can drive slow and you can jump out and run around, and then they can pick you up and catch you and run back, but that's about it. We've got to make a commitment to having comprehensive mass transit that works. It's not mass transit if I want to come from my house in Park Hill to downtown and it takes an hour and a half because I have to transfer 3 times. I'm not taking 3 different buses to get to work. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to ride my bike and go to work when my office has no shower. That's not happening. So, that's the point that still, as a society, I don't know, I think people buy it. I think we just get gridlock in the halls of the General Assembly and city councils, and we just can't quite figure this out with the mass transit piece. But that's what's needed to relieve air quality.
Natasha, with your Denver newsletter, you've talked about a lot of these kinds of issues, and really the kind of unique journey Denver's on. There's a lot more people. Traffic is still a bother. There are folks that worry about climate change, but what's the right way to handle that? What are your reactions to the points we heard from Tim?
I think what you just summarized is exactly why this issue is so complicated, because it's about so many things. I mean, yes, I spent an hour stuck in traffic yesterday and I didn't like it. It also made me think if I could have found an alternative route to do what I needed to do yesterday. And importantly, over the past year, we've seen how important public health is. We've seen how important the ability to breathe is. And in our communities, and especially certain groups and portions of our communities who've felt that impact more than other parts of our city, we need to keep that conversation at the forefront. At the same time, though, whenever I hear proposals like this, my first question is there something else that would work better? Now, I don't necessarily have an idea of what that other thing might be, but if you'd asked me a month ago if the state was going to offer $1 million for people to get a vaccine that's proven by science to do well, I probably would have said no way. But now we're doing that. So I don't know, maybe we need to find $1 million fund and do a lottery that encourages people to reduce their travel by car and find some other solutions. But that would be my takeaway, is what else can we do to help improve both the quality of our city, the quality of our air, and the quality of our lives?
The power of the lottery. Maybe that's where the solution is, Natasha. Well said. Tim, as always, we're just so grateful for everything you've been able to support the program. We really appreciated your question, and hopefully you enjoyed our thorough response.
Loved it. Loved every minute of it. Thank you. I'll keep watching.
Tim, thank you so much. Tim Jackson with the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, a super fan. Now, remember that we're doing this and making you part of the show because we're hoping that you also support Colorado Inside Out. It's easy to do. You can go to our website. If you're watching this online, it's pretty easy to do. pbs12.org/supportcio, or call the number on the bottom of your screen if you're old school like me, 1-800-690-5234. Let's talk with another super fan. We're going to chat with local activist and community builder Ian Tafoya. Ian, it's great to have you on the program. How long have you been watching? What have been some of the reasons that you keep up with Colorado Inside Out?
Well, hi, thanks everyone. I have been watching Colorado Inside Out for years, and I even had a chance to help do some research for a time machine a few years ago with Larry Patchett. I had been on Denver 8, both as a host of a music television show, and I had PSAs that ran for a lot of years. And so, I think once you're into public media, you just can't stop coming back to it. And I think it's a great way for me to get history lessons from David or from Patty, or to hear different perspectives that I might not hear out in the streets talking to the people that I talk to, because I know it's really important to hear different points of view. And I know that reporters are out there reaching people that I might not think of, and I get to hear about other individuals in the community, and that helps me build my power and my community power. Well, I guess I'm still.
Yeah, no, that's okay, Ian. No, you're doing just fine. It's that this is the magic of being live TV. It's fantastic. So, Ian, first of all, you beat me to the punch. Thank you for your work on our Emmy-winning Time Machine series. The fact that we're able to lean on you for some extra historical support. I think especially with our microphones, which I'll remind our viewers, you go back and check those out. We go with as authentic microphones as possible, and Ian Tafoya helped us with that. So, Ian, let's get to your question, and we'll mix it up with kind of the answers, the order-wise. But what's your question for our panel?
Yeah, my question today has to do with criminal justice reform. We're here at a year after the tragic murder of George Floyd that led to lots of unrest and violence in our community, both from the police and from unknown community people. 2 days after the riots, I actually led a large group of individuals to do the cleanup and to have the deeper conversations about where we're going. What I can say is from that place, the community had come together, and originally the government had come together to form this reimagining police task force here in Denver. But I think it has far larger reach than just Denver, right? I mean, Aurora is looking into this, but people look to the Capitol about what we're doing. I've seen criminal justice issues in my community, people not having legal representation. I've seen the unhoused treated unfairly. I've seen police treat people unfairly and police violence in my community. And so it seems clear to me that some reform is needed. I think that most people are in that place. I mean, if we look back to the first days, to know that the body cameras weren't even on, that they couldn't even tell us who was on duty that day. These are huge mistakes within the bureaucracy that we can fix. The Reimagining Police Force Task Force released 112 recommendations this week, had a big rally. Unfortunately, some representatives of the administration walked away before it's done. I read in the newspaper, that Council President Stacey Gilmore is set to form a committee. Mayor Hancock, at the same time as saying he wants to work on this, is also saying he's cracking down on 5 areas of town that have had more spikes in crime. And so what I'm wondering is, how do we move forward to reform? Because what I see is a community desiring to go the ballot route through a charter amendment, which is really difficult. I've run several and won several, and I've lost some. It's not easy. Through council isn't always easy, and then getting them to agree. And so I'm really just curious, with all of your expertise, where do we go from here?
I think that's a great question. Why don't we go reverse around the horn? Natasha, you had to wait so long last time. We'll give you the chance to the first hit on this. You heard a lot of great points from Ian. What are some of the things that stick out to you?
Well, where do we go from here? I think the question that we need to ask ourselves every day in the coming year. As you mentioned, we're 1 year after George Floyd's murder, and the impact that one moment had on the world on the country and certainly this state, I think we don't fully realize yet. And maybe that's a point, is that I've heard a lot of talk over the last year, a lot of people talking about doing the work, which is wonderful and important things that need to happen. But now it's time to actually start doing that work. As you said, there are several groups involved in this, from every level of government down to the individuals. But on this particular issue, I think, and what we saw last year, is that the change is going to come from individuals. This is where community matters perhaps more than all. And then cooperation between those different groups is going to be key. I mean, unfortunately, though, in Denver and across the country, this story didn't begin with George Floyd's murder. It's something that we've been dealing with for years, for decades even. And so I think it's both looking at what's happened in the past year and keeping those elected officials accountable on what they're promising to do, but then also making sure that we're looking back further in time to see why we continue to make mistakes, why we haven't made more progress. This is a story that I don't anticipate going away anytime soon, but I certainly hope that as we look at this year anniversary, that it is an impetus for people to make the change that they want to happen in this world.
Pam, let me go to you next, because we have government at many levels attempting to address this, local, state, and federal, all able to do different things effectively. The question, where do we go from here? Of all the different things Ian talked about, what are your comments?
Ian, first of all, Ian, thank you for the question, because I really think that question deals with the major issue in society and of the day that's led to some of the polarization as a country. We still haven't come to reconciliation and deal with the history of slavery and its impact in our country and the racism that's been bred. One interesting point, and Natasha touched on this, I would urge everyone to watch, it's a small 7-minute snippet on CNN where they interview the last surviving member of what was the Harris Commission that was formed during the presidency of Lyndon Johnson when he got civil rights legislation passed. A commission was formed to investigate how do you deal with racism in America, and racism in particular in terms of policing. And this person who they interviewed said his greatest lament is, we came up with a bunch of recommendations and solutions, and for political reasons, not a single one of them was implemented. So please, none of us should lose sight of our history, and don't think that all of this just started with George Floyd. We have decades of this problem in this country. And Ian, I would offer that the solutions, and Dominic's question touched on it, it has to happen at every level. When I was in the legislature, I ran a bill that I thought wouldn't be too controversial. It said, let's just stop building prisons for 2 years and think about how to reallocate money and deal with other ways to address people who are in the system. Couldn't get it passed. Sentencing reform, parole reform, probation reform, all of those things have been tried. They're beginning to happen now incrementally, but we're going to have to accept the fact it's going to be incremental steps to get to where we need to go. But the thing that's most important is, just as you raised the question, Ian, people have to show up. They have to show up in the halls of city council, county commissioners, state legislature, Congress, and they need to speak out. Because until elected officials understand that this is the will of those of us who are governed, you're not going to see real change.
Eric, like a lot of the issues we tackle here in Colorado Inside Out, this has a lot of different angles to it, and we talk about the multiple levels of government to address, but there's also a lot of different angles within even those. Have you seen, I guess, productive responses so far at whatever level? Do you see some of the things being addressed effectively?
I don't know if I've seen productive change yet. I think change is slow. I've certainly seen productive conversations, and thank you as well, Ian, for a thoughtful and obviously, critical question to the times we live in. It's tough to go after Natasha and Penn on this particular question because they were both so eloquent. I tend to be sort of the moderate sometimes in some questions, some conversations, and I'll probably play that role again here. There is no doubt that the George Floyd killing a year ago yesterday was an inflection point. There was an inflection point years and years, decades, generations in the making, as Penn and others have pointed out. The trick is to make sure what we're doing is improving the situation without going too far in a way that destroys ultimate objectives. There is no question that police need better training. They need to have higher discipline when police misbehave or when there is police misconduct. The discipline should be swift, and that has not always been the case. In fact, in Denver, it's rarely been the case, as we've seen by the just lack of prosecution of cops who've gone way too far, or rogue cops. So it's a matter of standards. It's a matter of ethics and values within that police culture. It's a matter of discipline. It's a matter of accountability. But yet we're living at a time where crime is definitely, particularly violent crime, is going up in Denver and other major urban areas around the country. And I'm particularly struck by polling, and I haven't seen Colorado-specific polling, but I don't think Colorado is substantially different than polling I've seen nationally and out of other communities, that even just focusing on minority community, black and brown respondents, you ask them whether they want more police presence in their areas, in their neighborhoods, or less. And the answer by almost 4-to-1 kind of margins, 3.5-to-1 margins, is they want more police presence. Now, they don't want the same old police presence, but the notion of defunding or dislocating police is not the answer. The answer is much more nuanced than that. Hopefully, we are moving in that direction because the conversations are happening.
David, as a research director, you've covered a lot of the related issues here, and as working at DU Law School, I'm sure there's a lot of conversations among a variety of these angles. What are some of the things that stuck out to you as you're listening to Ian?
Well, as someone who's been writing about unjustifiable police violence and excessive incarceration through extreme mandatory minimum sentences since the early 90s, I'm glad to see some people who think they're progressive finally catching up to where I've been for about 27 years. There are all kinds of different reforms that get proposed, and each one needs to be looked at carefully on its own. One of the things that has to be understood is that you can't reform anything just by listening to the people who hate the institution. So if you want to reform banking laws, which I would say after 2008 that looked like an awfully good idea, you don't just go to Bernie Sanders, who doesn't know anything about banking, probably can't even balance his checkbook, and all he knows about bankers is that he hates them. You need to sit down with the bankers, and not just the big bank presidents, but also some rank and file people and everything along there, and the same thing for law enforcement positive reform, like Representative Herod did to her credit by sitting down with former Sheriff State Senator John Cook in the bill that passed the legislature last June. More broadly, when I wrote about the Rampart scandal in Los Angeles, where the police department anti-drug unit was in fact turned into a criminal gang that was basically murdering and robbing the drug dealers and falsifying evidence against other people, the fundamental problem is mediocrity. Now, very talented people can commit crimes too, but the big cause of problems goes back to mediocrity in personnel. And if you want good, high-quality policing, you need to pay for good, high-quality officers to make that attractive rather than the only job that somebody can get. And you need to end this evil, malicious vilification of law enforcement as a whole. The climate we got to in June, where Lego cancels its police building set, all kind of, TV shows cancel their channels, cancel their police programs, all this massive hatred that was directed against police officers is already making many fewer people willing to go into policing and making many qualified officers leave, and that is the opposite of how we're going to get progress.
Patty Westward's covered this issue, covered the variety of angles of this issue since you started the paper, and when you hear the different comments from Ian and kind of where we go from here, wrap it up for us.
Well, a couple of things. One is it's nice to hear that Eric saw that poll, that people want more police presence, maybe a different kind. There actually were more applications in Denver this year for the police academy than in previous years. 3%, which may not be huge, but considering all the reasons maybe not to apply, that's actually positive because you would hope the people who are going in understand that change is needed. Speaking of change, body cameras, and cell phones. Think about the difference we now have Every individual should be alert to what's going on. They should decide for themselves what's going on. They should have the evidence to see it. You think about the George Floyd case where that teenage girl had her cell phone. She captured that. It made the difference to see those 9 minutes. You think about the fact that the body cameras in the Elijah McClain case mysteriously stopped working. If we had known what really had happened, would we have seen justice earlier and more thoroughly for Elijah McClain? So that's one of the things. That is going to make a difference. Let's equip all the departments that need it with that. And let's have the individuals keep an eye out, too, on what's going on. I think in general, people agree that there should be some police reform, not defunding, but Ian certainly is involved with the homeless situation. Police do not need to be babysitters and social workers. They're not the people who need to go to the encampments. Let's have people who can actually provide services and help go. When someone complains that someone set up an illegal tent in front of their house, send someone from the city who's a different person, a healthcare worker, someone who can help. Why is it a police thing? Bad use of limited resources.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for clearly a thoughtful question. I think we probably could do a whole hour just on that if we wanted. But so thank you for providing that. And thank you for being such a super fan that you're checking us out all the time. We hope we gave you some valuable perspective for your question.
Yes, I really appreciate it. I'll definitely be tuning in every single week to hear the best of the news. And to your point, Patty, yes, I have had the police contact me. People call police on me for washing the hands of the poor. There is something that has to change in the psyche of the individuals in our society about what is worthy of bringing a gun into the situation. And when I get into these conflicts at times, cleaning up the trash that the city fails to, I ask the neighbors, do we need a gun to have a trash conversation?
Ian Tafoya, community builder and activist, thank you so much for being a part of our special night here. If you're just tuning in, you know that we are doing a very special event here, online only, as a very special way to include all of you, our big fans, as part of this program, but also let you know that your support makes the big difference around here. It's a small station, and we're very proud of the show. We've been doing it for over 29 years now, but we do it because of your support. So if this is something you like and saying, hey, I want to be sure we can do it for another 29 years, go to our website, pbs12.org/supportcio, or you can call the number at the bottom of your screen. If you are an old school person like me, that's 1-800-690-5234. So we wanted to make this a fun event. We had already some great voices included, but we wanted to throw a little bit of fun here for our panel. We have 5 great, these are the all-stars, if you will. So we thought it'd be kind of fun to throw a couple trivia questions at you guys, just to see. I figure there's going to be no challenge for all 5 of you, but we're going to throw out a question, and then what we've done, we prepped some trivia questions for everybody, and then and I know that I've been able to see the answers, but the panel has not seen them. So I'm going to read a question, and then we'll have about 30 seconds. Everyone can kind of offer their answer. No prize other than bragging rights, but I think around this table, that's a pretty big prize. So let's go to our very first question. So first question we're going to throw out: what year did Colorado expand from 3 congressional districts to 4 congressional districts? 2 districts and 2 at large. A multiple choice question. We have 4 choices here. A, 1913, B, 1915, C, 1912, or D, none of the above. All right, so do we have some guesses from the panel here? Patty, David, any guesses?
None of the above.
None of the above. We have Patty there. David?
I'll go for that also. I think it came later.
Okay, all right. Then Eric?
That would be my instinct if I was going first, but since they've already claimed that territory, I'll go with, was 1912 an option?
1912 is an option.
That would have been post of, following a census, so the year ending.
Good thought process here, I like that.
Sense.
All right, Penn?
I think it's none of the above, but was 1915 a choice?
1915 is a choice.
I'm going with 1915.
Okay, Penn. Natasha, we want to give you a shot here. Any guesses on what year did Colorado expand from 3 congressional districts to 4?
I'm going to say 1912, and I promise I didn't Google it on my phone.
Natasha's by far, she's our in-house optimist and the most honest person ever on the program. So clearly, I did not think we were ever going to stump this panel. I would have gone with Eric and Natasha, 1912. 1913 is the answer. 1913
Hey, Natasha and I were close.
that's right. Yeah, you do get closest to bragging
What do you know?
rights.
We might have been 1912 and a half. Can I point out that this is a current event show?
That's a very good point. Okay, well, we had to go history. I mean, trivia question for current events is tough. Let's get to maybe a couple quick rounds, or we'll just go to a couple of folks and some questions that we have from our viewers. This is part of the whole deal here, is that we're including your voice here, and we had some great questions already inputted to the program. So let's go on here. Let's see. We have got a question here. And let's see, he had a couple of Randy, avid viewer and commentator on our program, had a couple of questions. First of all, Randy wanted to know, he had a couple questions. The show should be an hour long. Give your panel members a chance to explain their points of view for an hour. That makes sense. That's what this whole event is, going for an hour. And Dusty Saunders was also a big fan of the show going an hour. We always thought, leave them wanting more rather than, being asked to leave. But let's get to a question. How about a review of where our tax money really goes? $70 million in revenue for marijuana sales alone. So where your tax dollars go, marijuana sales. I'm going to throw as a jump ball. Who wants this one first?
I'll take marijuana.
Okay.
Why not?
Yes. Let's go to the expert. Patty, the expert.
That is the question that is asked more of us at Westward than any other question. And the fact is, this is something that state government does a good job with, which is they have a website where you can go and you can see where the marijuana money is going. Local municipalities aren't quite as good, but they generally are good too. So it is going pretty much where people said it would go in the beginning. That doesn't mean that's the right place still, but you can find it. The rest of where your tax dollars go, good luck. But pot, you can find it.
Then most of them go to education?
Education, but construction, kind of construction projects. There's the BEST program, and it was specified in Amendment 64, and it's going there.
All right. As always, you can't beat a comment about pot money from Patty. Anybody else wanted a shot at this one?
The marijuana
David.
money is, by our state constitution, quite constrained in where it goes and very specific, because in the 21st century, as in 1876, the voters accurately expect the legislator will sleaze every penny they possibly can. And so that's why marijuana money or tobacco tax revenue, all of those things are quite prescriptively allocated. The place where you really wonder where does the money go, and it's hard to find out, is all these slush funds in the governor's office, because those don't come from normal taxes that are then appropriated by the legislature. They come in grants, the governor gets the money, the governor spends the money, no legislative control and not much oversight or accountability or even knowledge of where the money ends up.
Well, let's get another question here, and Natasha, I'll give you a heads up. We'll throw to you for this first, this next one. Next, we have Larry, who asked, with health being so much at the center of all of our lives recently, and for no other reason than its keystone alone, House Bill 1232, in its House-passed form, arguably could be the most consequential bill passed by the legislature this session. Therefore, I would ask the CIO's online panel Wednesday night to address this aspect of House Bill 1232. How can House Bill 1232 not destroy health care delivery in Colorado? So Natasha, if you can just give us a very concise breakdown of House Bill 1232, the different points that you disagree with, and then we can go to comments. So let's throw it to Natasha.
Right, we have another hour, right? I can do that in that amount of time. I'm glad this topic came up, because this is a great example of when we tape the show, it's current news, so things are always changing. And today there was big movement on this bill. It passed the Senate with lots of revisions, so it's going to have to go back and be reconciled with what the House said. So it's a bit of a moving target right now. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that really short capsule. One of the things I find interesting here is how this conversation continues to evolve. And I'm going to wind back the clock a little bit and think about in the previous presidential race, back around the time of the Iowa caucus, when we thought the biggest story of the year was going to be the counting in Iowa. Not the case. But the main conversation was that the focus for a lot of the candidates across the country was going to be healthcare. Well, you could go back 4 years before that, and 4 years before that, and 4 years to 2008, and probably even beyond that as well. And healthcare has been at the forefront of people's mind. What's interesting to me is that we continue to refine this system, but haven't found a solution that works for everyone. And I think the pandemic has only brought to the forefront some of the inequities within within the healthcare system. Some of the concerns say the health insurance is so closely tied with employment. Public option, which this is no longer a public option, it's more of a private public option. It's called the Colorado option. It just seems that people still know that healthcare and health insurance are a hot topic for people. We just still don't know what the solution is for it. But it seems in this case, though, most people had to come to the table and have some conversations, which is why if you go view this bill online, it is redacted and amended and adjusted in so many ways.
Well, I have to say, part of this episode too is we want to kind of shed a light a little bit, move the curtain a little bit so you can see what the machinery behind it. I need to let you know what we do is we come up with the topics that we're going to write for a regular Friday show, and we send out a script Thursday late afternoon, sometimes Thursday early evening. So folks have a chance to know what we're talking about, but they don't hear the questions until we get on the show, and then they can offer some analysis. Tonight was different. We didn't get these questions out ahead of time, so the fact that we had that much analysis from our friend Natasha just shows what she and everyone else on our illustrious panel can do right off the top of their head. Who else wants a shot at each? I thought maybe Penn would want a shot at this one.
And I'm not even going to pretend that this is analysis. This is just a person's point of view. The reason this bill is so consequential is probably health care is the single issue that is probably most important to voters across the board. Now, the problem is not all these voters agree on how you address the issue. But if you take a look at things, I think by and large, most people think Medicare is a good idea. And over the years, Medicare has been refined. You have some quasi-private options in terms of advantage plans and supplemental plans, but by and large, most people think it's a good idea. That's sort of the genesis of things like this Colorado option and some of these other plans you see, is an effort to emulate the concept of a Medicare plan that is sort of there as a lowest common denominator, or a common denominator in terms of medical coverage for people. So I give the legislature credit. This may not be a perfect bill, and goodness knows it's going to continue to get amended through this process, and it should, because there should be compromise, there should be conversation, but we've got to continue and figure out how we address health care and the cost of health care and prescription drugs, because it's having a significant impact on communities across the country and throughout the state of Colorado.
Anybody else want a shot at 1232? Eric?
I'll just chime in, and not even specific to 1232 and Natasha's, off the top of her head analysis, even if she probably has Google open, kidding, was very impressive. Bigger picture, I think why healthcare is such a dilemma, and Penn is right. It's not. This is not just recent news. This goes back election cycle after election cycle, decade after decade. Well, first of all, there are two big issues of healthcare. One is access. Who has access to healthcare, and how do we expand access? The other one, which is even more problematic in some respects, is affordability. And why does healthcare just continue to skyrocket way past the cost of inflation of any other goods or services that we can really talk about? Going back to Obamacare, Democrats being Democrats who passed that bill went all in on the access and were light on the affordability provisions. But so much of healthcare defies any of the other laws of the marketplace that sort of regulate the marketplace and that we all know how to deal with. And this is a bigger subject. We could spend an hour on it. We could spend a whole show on it, and I won't. But the normal economic rules of supply and demand, of transparency, of knowing how much something is going to cost before that service is rendered to you, all that is out the window when it comes to healthcare. And that, to me, is the crux of the dilemma.
Well, before we move on, we'll just want to be sure we didn't miss anyone else want to jump in. Well, then let me do this. Like we've done tonight, this is all about including your voices. We want to get one more comment in here. Suzanne had a comment. She said, I like to see the inclusion of topics of high interest to cities and counties around Colorado. Love the show. Very happy you said that because we really pride ourselves in trying to, it's not just about Denver. Clearly, this capital city, it's going to have a lot of the news, but we don't just try to stay here. And with time running short, I tell you what, I want to get back to some of these. We have a few more trivia questions, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to do this. Just got the lighthearted part of it, then we'll start to wrap up. So let's get to our next question. This is giving the folks in back kind of a chance to catch up with me because I'm freelancing here. It's directing from the host chair, as the folks in the back are saying right now. We're going to go to the question one about the presidential election of 1976. So our question here is, To whom did Colorado's electoral votes go in the presidential election of 1976? Was it, another multiple choice here, Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, or Gerald Ford? Colorado's electoral vote. We've had Eric for Gerald Ford.
Jimmy Carter.
Obviously, Ford.
We had David there with an obvious.
I don't think Carter won a single state west of the Mississippi. Maybe Hawaii.
It could have been a pen.
I think it was Ford.
Sticking with that. Natasha, we always give you a shot here. Your choice of who got the electoral votes.
Point out that Natasha wasn't with us in 1976.
She's good at history. The things that happened before she was born for 200. Alex, go ahead, Natasha.
Oh no, I'm totally begging off. Yes, wasn't born, but I appreciate and realized that I need to do some more history, writing it down right now in the 1976 election.
Well, the answer is, big drum roll, Gerald Ford. That's right. That was the answer. That's who got our electoral votes. We're going to keep this one. This is a lot of fun. I think you're going to enjoy this next one. Again, I want to give the folks in back a chance to catch up. This is going to be question 2, all about laws in Colorado. So this is a kind of a crazy law here. Which of the following is indeed a law in a Colorado county? A, it's illegal to throw snowballs. B, all bathtubs must have feet. C, if a child burps during church, their parents can be arrested. Or D, barbers are not permitted to eat onions during business hours. 4 wacky laws. We'll go to Patty for her first guess.
Illegal to throw snowballs.
Okay, all right, Patty with the snowballs. David, one of our 2 esteemed lawyers in the panel.
Oh, that's a tough one. I'll go for what should be the best law, which is requiring feet on bathtubs, because they just look so much better.
There we go. Eric?
I had a book somebody gave me as a gift years ago of the wackiest law in all 50 states. And I think I remember, per Patty, that it's illegal to throw snowballs.
Penn?
I think Patty's right.
Okay, snowballs are popular. Natasha, we throw to you. Which one is a law in Colorado?
To mix it up and to support onion farmers everywhere, I'm going to go with that one.
There's a child of a farmer from North Dakota is going to be supporting the onion farmers here in Colorado. It is indeed, when in doubt, go with Patty. It's illegal to throw snowballs. So that is a wacky law.
I think that was actually overturned this year.
Was it? Oh, see, well,
But I'm not sure.
See, this is the kind of expertise you can come to know and love here on Colorado Inside Out. 2 more. We got to get to the last one because it's my favorite, but this is the second to last one. Question 3, which of the following was something what was something Referendum C funding had to be spent on? A, health insurance for firefighters and police. B, education. C, corrections facilities. D, business assistance. Referendum C funding had to go to this one. David, we talked about Referendum C for quite a while. Do you have a guess?
Well, it was all a sham, because all the folks, they got Colorado CU President Hank Brown to support it as a credible Republican, because he thought he'd get a lot of money for higher education. And then it turned out, yeah, we got lots more taxes for higher education, and we'll cut our existing spending on higher education. Some kind of education thing is what they purported they would spend it on.
That was our longest multiple choice answer. I like them, David. Eric, yes?
I believe it was education without all of David's editorial comments.
That's right. Penn?
I think it was education.
Patty?
I agree.
Okay, looks like we're going for clean sweep. Natasha, are you going to go away from the crowd? Or are you going with education?
I'm going to go with education.
All right, that was hard to stump this panel on Tabor. Or Referendum C for that matter. This one was my favorite.
Let me just point
go
one
ahead.
other thing out. And former Governor Owen endorsed C because he also supported Ref D, which was the transportation.
He was the mastermind of the whole thing. Absolutely.
So this one was my favorite. I had a good time doing this one. There's a couple different wacky angles of this one. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but this spoke to the panel. All right. So 3-parter here. Gonna have to catch up with this one. When did congressional districts 5, 6, and 7 get created, and who were the first representatives to be elected to those districts? You had congressional district 5, 6, and 7, and who were the very first reps? And this was one of my favorite ones. And some of these folks have been in this very studio, but with CD7, it's kind of a giveaway. But so CD5, we'll start there. Guesses on when
go
CD5
first.
was created. Which one?
I thought you wanted all three.
Well, you can go with all three. If you have all three, go for it. This is an honors group here, so if you have all three, go for it.
I'm pretty sure on two of these.
Okay.
CD5 was 1970 and Bill Armstrong.
Okay.
CD6, that's what I'm debating, whether it was 1980 or 1990.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with 1980.
1980.
And Jack Swigert was elected to it and tragically passed away before taking office. And so the first person to serve there was Dan Schaefer.
And CD7.
And CD7 would be 2000 and Bob Beaupre.
Okay. All right, so we have guesses from Eric of 1970, 1980, and 2000 with Bill Armstrong, Jack Swigert, Dan Schaefer, and Bob Beaupre. Any conflicts?
No, let's end this charade. We all know Eric's right.
Well, there is one adjustment, though. One adjustment. I mean, if this
Hang
was
on a
Jeopardy, yeah, let's.
I agree with him on 7 at 2000, Bob Beaupre. I think 6 is right with 80, Schweigert and Schaefer. I'm going to get this wrong, but for some reason, I think 5, I don't think it was Armstrong.
Okay.
I can see a face, but I can't think of a name. The name I want to say is Ken Kramer, but I don't think that's
No.
right.
He was later.
Yeah, but I can see a face, I just can't think of the name.
And where was Ken Kramer? Wasn't he 6?
He's 6, but later.
Yeah,
Later.
Six
and,
or later.
and to be precise, the districts were created in
After the
81,
reinforcement.
after the 80 census, 81.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So that was the Jeopardy part of it. Natasha, any angle there? We didn't want to leave you out here.
I will say this, that this is one of the reasons I love appearing on the show, is that as a transplant to Colorado, and there's so much I still need to learn about this state, I learn something new every time I come on the show, but I have no guidance on this particular question.
Everybody was right. Well, 1971, so it's created after the census. Bill Armstrong was CD5. Jack Swigert, buried at Mount Olivet Cemetery, and Dan Schaefer, also from Apollo 13. Was he one of the?
No, he wasn't.
Was it? I thought.
Yeah,
yeah, he was
Swigert
played.
was 13.
He's
Yes, he
Kevin
was.
Bacon in the movie, I think.
that's
Dan Schaefer first represent that district. A young yours truly was visiting D.C. in 9th grade and has his picture with his other D.C. Visitors from Everett Junior High School, along with our Congressman Dan Schaefer. And indeed, Bob Beaupre was the first congressional representative of CD7. He beat who by how many votes?
He beat Mike Feely. First digit was a 100. I'm going to go with 131.
Very close, 121.
121.
I think Eric gets special points for that one, bringing that one home. I think it's just an example of how much fun we enjoy having here in Colorado Inside Out that you've made possible. We've had a lot of fun talking about the different parts of the program tonight, and again, really knocking home that we've been able to be on the air for 29 seasons now because of all your support. This is something you want to see for another 29 years. It's not too late. You can go to pbs12.org/supportcio. And I want to give everyone just a quick shot. Anything that we missed or a shout out to our viewers. We're wrapping up the program, but I want to give a shot. Patty, you always get the first shot at Disgrace of the Week, so you get the, I guess we'll call this to say something nice about the fans.
Well, the fans and all the people who've sat around this table, or the different tables, the smaller tables. And I remember one of my favorite fans sent a note that she always fantasized that I was the love child of Al Knight and Sue O'Brien, if you watch those great, smart panelists.
I hate to break the heart of that viewer. I've been able to meet Mr. and Mrs. Calhoun. They were wonderful parents. But if Al and Sue were to have a love child, I think they'd turn out pretty cool, like you, Patty. David, your final shot.
And just to refute the rumors, Patty was not secretly married to Peter Boyles.
That's true. Nor his secretary. Nor his secretary.
Shout out to the viewers who watch because they want to hear diverse points of view, which is different from a lot of what people are doing and just siloing and only wanting to hear things they already agree with.
Eric, your shout out to our fans.
Ditto what David just said. And back to your first question where we started of what people say when they recognize you out in public. After the recognition, the compliment is usually not to me or anyone else individually. It's to the respectful dialogue. that is synonymous with this show. We disagree, and sometimes we disagree spiritedly, but we don't yell, we don't shout, we don't talk over each other, we don't insult. That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, the worst insult thrown around here is calling Natasha an optimist. Penn, your shout out to our fans.
You know, I couldn't agree more, but what Eric said, you know, time after time, when I see people and they say, we watch the show, we love the show, they enjoy the fact that we can disagree without being disagreeable. But the other thing they always ask is, do you guys really think that? Do you guys really get along that well? Is it always that nice? I'm like, yeah, sometimes the debate before and after the camera's rolling is the best debate. But no, we do get along, and it's fun. It's fun and informative.
Always the best part of the show. First 5 minutes, last 5 minutes, it's just our legal team will not let us air it. And Natasha, you get the last word. Your final shout out to our fans.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the show, I just really appreciate how thoughtful they are, how curious, because it allows me to be curious and to do my job better. But in addition to that, our fans, I appreciate them so much, but I also want to give a shout out to the crew that makes this show possible, particularly during the pandemic, that makes me being in the studio but not in the studio possible. It's been a pretty remarkable year, but a pretty remarkable 29-year run.
Natasha, I'm so glad you said that. I think that's a great point. This was such an exciting event for all of us. Not only did we get a chance to thank you at home for making all this possible for so long, but this was the first time we had a full boat here at the table since March 13th, 2020. It meant a lot to us, and it meant a lot to our crew to be able to come back and shake off the rust and be able to handle a full boat show. This is the most folks we've had in the building for something like this in a long, long time. But we're cognizant that we're able to do this because so many of you have invited us into your homes, whether it be via your TV, your tablet, your laptop, your phone, whatever it's going to be. We're there because of your support, so we do not take that for granted. Thank you for supporting the show for so long, making it possible and tuning in, and for all the great questions tuned in that we couldn't get to tonight, but it also just means we have more to do next time. So that is indeed all the time we have for this very special episode of Colorado Inside Out. For everyone here in front of and behind the cameras here at PBS 12, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thank you so much for watching and supporting us all these years. Good night, and we'll see you on Friday for our regularly scheduled Colorado Inside Out. The other ones, I thought it was the